We are getting ready to present, and I'm sharing my screen. So excited to have you all here with us. Here we go. Excellent, excellent. Welcome, everyone. Got my music here. Sorry that we're starting a little late. We've had some technical difficulties. You'd think that we would be all great with Zoom, for a year and a half, but things still happen. My internet literally went out. But I'm so excited to be here today with Reverend Dr. Brandon T. Crowley, who is my pastor, my personal pastor. I'm claiming you. And so we are going to have an awesome conversation. As I mentioned, he's the pastor of Myrtle Baptist Church. It's a historically Black church in West Newton. And we have done a lot of co-teaching, ministering, sermoning around mental health topics. And so I'm so excited to have him now on my platform to talk about mental health advocacy and the work that he's doing, how he's using his position as a pastor to promote mental health in his congregation. Before we get started, I'm going to give a little bit of overview of Innocence so that you understand who we are and what we do. So Innocence is an organization that's aimed at disrupting racial inequities in mental health. We feature a national therapists of color directory that makes it easier and faster for people of color to find therapists of color. Our goal is to increase access and to change the conversation about mental health, particularly in communities of color. So that is our mission. This year, we have an ambitious goal of bringing in 2,021 therapists of color into our network. These are some of the therapists we have here. So if you are someone who's looking for a therapist, we encourage you to go to our website, innocence.com, find a therapist. And if you are a therapist of color, we would love for you to join our network. And you can join the network going to innocence.com/join directory. Again, we're looking to really increase the number of therapists in our network. I don't have to tell you that mental health is critical now more than ever. We have an unprecedented number of people who are looking for therapists every day. And we want to make sure that we can meet that need and support people on their emotional wellness journey. So that's a little bit about us. What I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will start our conversation. So again, Pastor Crowley, I am so excited to have you here again. So one of the things that I start when we have these conversations, we really start with understanding the person who is on the guest of our show. So we want to know kind of what drives you, what inspires you, what has gotten you into the thing that you do that wakes you up with a smile every day. So I'd love for you to start off by sharing kind of what has been your inspiration to first be a pastor, and then secondly, this journey around mental health and wellness. That's part of your social justice platform, which I really admire and respect. So we'll just open it up to start there.
Well, first, I just want to say a word of thanks to you for inviting me to your pulpit and to your sanctuary. We believe as members of the Black church tradition in brush harbors and sacred spaces, religious spaces, where Black people can come together to care for each other's souls, doing soul crafting. And that's what you've created. This is a sanctuary. This is a brush harbor. Just like our ancestors created. So thank you for inviting me to share. I'm so honored. And I also just want to take the privilege as your pastor to also say that we are so proud of you. And we are just thankful to God that God sent you to the world, that God sent you to this earth to do this work that you're doing. So we're so excited. To talk about myself and describe myself, this is always a sort of hard question to sort of define, because I've decided to stop bifurcating my identity or categorizing myself. I've accepted all of the all-overness that I am. But to sort of specify it a bit, I see myself as an African American queer proclaimer of the gospel. And I'll take those categories and just sort of share with you what that means to me. The African American piece, I put that first on purpose, because my Blackness and my uniqueness and the narrative that makes me who I am is sacred and holy, just as a sacred text as the Quran, as the Bhagavad Gita, as the Bible. A lot of times we as Black people are always gravitating towards everyone else's narratives, including the narratives of Jews and of other individuals, without looking at our survival narrative. So I look at myself as an African American first, and with that comes survival, striving, techniques of maintaining both intimacy with self and other human beings, both platonically and erotically. All of that to me is what Blackness represents. It represents food, it represents touch, it represents music. And so that's a part of who I am. All of those wells and streams are flowing through me when I hit the door. The queer part, I put second intentionally. And the reason that I do that is because I like to define myself as, first of all, a noun that then goes into action through a verb. So whereas I see my African American identity as that which I am, I see the second identity qualifier that I associate with myself, queerness, as being what I do. And by do, I don't mean by that as far as sex. I think we've got to begin to see the word queer beyond the confines of sexuality. I see queering as a way of living that is subversive. It means to subvert the norm. When you see a power dynamic and when you see hierarchies in which there are oppressive factions that are the result of some oppressive measure, oppressed faction as a result of an oppressive measure, to queer something is to turn it up on its head, to subvert that norm. So I am constantly, my worldview is as a queer person, I am constantly looking at a situation, seeing where the oppression is in it and addressing that. If you follow my homiletical method, you're probably going to leave my church if you constantly need sermons that stroke your spiritually adolescent ego towards seeing yourself as being just always needing to know that God's getting ready to bless you, God's getting ready to turn around, God's getting ready to send you something with your name on it. My homiletical method is to always look at it through the queer lens, not through the lens of sexuality. A lot of people claim I'm always talking about sexuality, but the truth is I'm bringing it up, and their heteronormative ears are just not used to hearing it that often. So when people say that, I just throw that out. Okay, that's ignorance. I just need to let them sit in that for a moment until they evolve. But instead, what I'm saying is I look at the text and I see who's oppressed in it, and I see what's happening in it. Just got through preaching a sermon about the woman at the well. Instead of looking at Jesus and all the magic and spiritual splendor that he did, why don't we look at the social situatedness of this woman that causes Jesus to have to respond to her context, respond to her situation, inadvertently responding to her. Notice I said context, situation first, then her. Because a lot of times we think that the answer is to go directly at the person without recognizing that persons exist within pockets of contexts. Then the last part.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
I was going to tell folks.
Yes, go ahead.
Pastor Crowley is a scholar, so we're going to get educated today. So keep dropping your knowledge. But I want to make a connection between what you just said and some of the work that we're doing around decolonizing psychology. But I'll let you finish your point.
And then the last part is a preacher. And I've decided to take that identity marker over all the others that everybody else tries to put on me. Public speaker, politics, whatever these different type of titles that people try to put on me. My publisher tried to say to me, I think you need to be a politician. I don't know why you're trying to be an academic. I said, listen, don't tell me what I need to be. Not my publisher, but one of the publishers that I was talking to that didn't go in. But anyway, I've accepted the one of preacher solely because I think it's important that Christian motif be seen as morally congruent with my Blackness and my queerness. And that is the ultimate mode by which I perform my Blackness through my religiosity, through the proclaimed word. There used to be a time when I would bifurcate my identity and I'd preach a certain way here and a certain way there. No. If you get me and you call me, you're going to get me. You need to do your homework beforehand to figure out what it is that you're receiving. Now, of course, I know that there are certain places that African-American polysyllabic sound becomes more of a caricature of the greatness than actually a reflection of something good when it's in a context that it can't be accepted. You don't run off hooping and hollering in spaces that can't receive that. But I think you get what I'm saying. So I see those three identities and as what God has called me to do. God sent me to this earth to exist within my Blackness, to walk within my queerness as a mode of being and existing in the world, to do the work that I'm supposed to do in the world, and to filter all of that through my Christocentric lens. It does not mean that I am proselytizing constantly and suggesting that other faith traditions are not pathways to God. But instead, I'm allowing my Christian tradition to undergird my moral and ethical leanings, which means how I treat people, how I show up in the world as a thinking, acting, and existing human being who is guided by love and peace first.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you for that introduction. And, I've never heard you speak about your identity in that way. So that was something new for me. And I'm really intrigued by the using as queer as a verb, right? The way that you described that, it's action. It's like you said, turning, subverting what is normal. So thank you for sharing that. And it was really, for me, it was really enlightening to hear how you think about your different identities, but also how you've evolved over time, right? As you've grown. I remember when you started Myrtle, you were like 23 years old, right?
20? Oh no, younger. I was 21 when I candidated, and the next week I turned 22 when I became the pastor.
21 years old, but you held that and continue to hold the church and the congregation with such love and such passion and charisma. I know why people ask you to be a politician. So again, thank you for sharing that. One of the things you talked about in your introduction was about recognizing the context of the situation that a person is in. And one of the things that I've started really kind of learning and digging into is this model called liberation health, liberation psychology, which really names the context. When we think about psychology and how it was developed, right? Black people, BIPOC people were not in those rooms helping to develop those theories. We were not even a thought, right, when those theories were being developed. In terms of support, we were there when we're being pathologized, but not really thinking about us in the healing lens. And so the liberation model really talks about naming the context of oppression and racism. And we can't really do and operate therapy if we don't name those contexts, because the individual always be then pathologized if we don't recognize the hostile environment in which many of us operate and live in. So I love that. There was such a great connection there.
I think we need to preach a sermon on that. I think we need to do another tag team sermon on that right there, what you just said. Yes.
You always trying to get me to preach some sermon, man.
Yeah, because I believe that God is on the inside of you. I keep telling you that God is on the inside of you.
So tell me, and again, thank you, as we have these conversations in June around Pride Month, what has been reaction to you being open and integrated in your identity, right? What has been the reaction to you in faith communities with you being vocal about who you are in all the spaces and all the ways that you show up?
Thank you for this question, and thank you for allowing me to share. I think I first want to say that I want to be honest first and say it was extremely difficult, and it has been a difficult journey. It has been challenging. It's been painful at times. I thank God for having a support system that has helped me to navigate the pain that sometimes it was not easy to not personalize. I'll just be honest about that. And my support system consisted of, and forgive me, Dr. Jackman, for the ranking in which I'm going to put this, but I'm just going to be honest. It was first my pastor. I thank God for my pastor and my pastors. I'll say that so as not to be sexist. My pastor and my pastor's wife are both pastors of our church. So the two of them, they have just loved and supported me. And I just want to say to allies who are out there listening to try and figure out how to support, my pastors didn't have all the answers because they were cisgendered heterosexual folk who just loved me, but that was enough. And they were also open to correction without taking it personal. They were open to me saying to them that their allyship in one way or another may have been a contradiction. And then, making the parallel of how they are able to see the intricacies and the holes within white allyship to Blackness because of their Blackness. And because of my queerness, I was able to see into that. But so they just loved me and they were supportive. The other thing that they were flexible. Now I'm talking about my overall team now too. I'm gonna go down through the other names, but they were also flexible because here's the other thing that I need allies to understand. When we come to you to tell you our identity, we are also on a journey, still trying to figure it out. And we need space to continue figuring it out. Don't make us have to already have it figured out when we come to you. And then start saying, well, you're switching up now. I don't know what you're doing. Okay, you act like when you were coming into your identity as a heterosexual sexual being, that you had it all figured out when you started dating, kissed somebody the first time at 16, and now you got it all figured out when you prescribe and announce your heterosexuality by going to the prom with the opposite sex. So you follow what I'm saying here of just that patience, giving people space. I think another thing that was in my support system was I also had a supportive, an extremely supportive family. And to have a supportive church family and to have a supportive biological family becomes helpful as well. Now, let me say that doesn't mean that my pastors did not have to evolve. It doesn't mean that my family didn't have to evolve. It wasn't peaches and cream in the beginning. These relationships, it took some rocky roads at some times, some moments of contention, I also had supportive, and this is another thing I want to tell people who are allies. And I say this proudly, knowing that the person who is my partner is secure enough to support me in saying this. I also had great and supportive partners who were not abusive. And this is the part that I need to say about the allyship piece. Just as you don't need to expect somebody to have it all together, you also need to give queer people the opportunity to date multiple people. It's crazy to me that if a queer person in the family switches a partner once, then they're a whore, they ain't got it all together. We got to have it all together. But you got that one straight guy, this happens in my family, that they just switching from one, I mean, not from one family reunion year to the next. I'm talking from Christmas to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving to Christmas is switching women. And it's, oh, he just being a boy, or he just sowing his wild oats. And so the other thing I had is I had supportive partners as well who supported me in that coming out process. That becomes important because some queer people are in relationships or in situations where one person is closeted, the other person's ready to come out. Let me just give a word. You cannot hinge your freedom on the journey that someone else is on. It is possible to still maintain a healthy platonic or a healthy friends with benefits relationship as long as it's agreed upon and appropriate with both parties with someone, and you still come out and not remain in the closet just because they're choosing to do so. It's also not responsible to force someone to come out because you're making a decision to come out. All right, but all of these things add into, you know, that sort of healthy relationship thing. The other thing I think that greatly added to it, my experience, is the fact that I left. Ooh, I'm so scared about who's gonna hear this, but I'm gonna tell the truth. I left the South. I had to get the hell up out of there because I realized that although I loved the culture of the context, it was toxic to my soul, to my spirit, to my innermost being. This is what I tell a lot of queer folk when it comes to church. You might just need to leave that church. I know the soundscapes of Black religion feel good, like something that no one else will ever be able to understand until they experience Black church themselves. But it just may be that you need to listen to Kirk Franklin at your house, and you need to keep your tail at home, and you need to listen to Brandon Thomas Crowley on YouTube because the place where you are is toxic. And that can be the same context with relationships, with churches, with family connections, whatever it is. So let me say that piece is that, yes, it was difficult. Yes, it was a challenge. I lost preaching engagements. The Sunday that I came out at Myrtle, I was supposed to preach at a church. And I actually had 2 preaching engagements that particular day, both of them on the same street. I won't say the street, but nevertheless, both those pastors took those preaching engagements back. And so, yes, it did hurt. The pastor of my home church, whom I love very dearly, he and I still greatly disagree with each other about this topic and subject matter. There are times when even I have family members who will say to me, "Oh, you're doing too much." Let me give you a prime example. It's been 6 years at Myrtle, and we've gotten, I'd like to think, past all of this. But last night, my whole evening got racked up in conference calls because we had a member of the church who is a descendant of one of the founding families of the church, who went off on the church social media platform about, I'm pushing a gay agenda, that there are groups of people that are hoping that the spirits of the ancestors of Myrtle will get together and haunt me, and that I'd get sick and all of this kind of stuff. You know, there's all this drama. We've had some instances before where I've gotten some death threats. You know, I thank God for, and I say this proudly, I thank God for Chief of Police Green, who is our head of security at Myrtle, and he keeps everything on lock. He knows everybody that lives around me, who's a sex offender, who is. So I will say at the end of that, the opposite end of where asking that question is that I want to use the trope and the line, it gets better. because I'm living my dream right now.
Mhm.
When I tell you I'm living my dream right now, I just can't tell you how much it is the truth. And I don't want you to hear that, because I know there are a lot of queer folk who are in clergy who see me and they're just like, he just always had it easy. He just yada, yada, yada. He ain't never had nothing difficult. No, I'm sharing with you the goodie so that you can know that it does get better. If you keep the faith, if you maintain your courage and your boldness, don't compromise your integrity, it does get better. I'm sitting here now in what I consider to be the most blessed of spaces, in that I'm pastoring a historic Black Baptist church. All my members will tell you one thing about me: I'm Baptist to the bone.
For sure.
I am Baptist to the bone. I love being Baptist and Black Baptist. I'll even tell my church sometimes, y'all ain't been Baptist enough. I need y'all to know this hymn, all right? And I want to be in that space. And I have the opportunity to be in that space, to be fully myself, and to also cry loud in moments like this to help other people. This is, I mean, it's a blessing from God.
Yeah. So thank you. You know, I really appreciate all that you shared. I'm going to break it down for the audience, because one of the things we do ask our guests to share personal struggle. So I appreciate you going right in there and then talking about how you navigated this challenge, right? And so one of the things, it's funny because I was doing a workshop this week for an organization. So a colleague and I did it. He's a queer psychologist, but I talked more about my experience in working with queer youth at the high school that I work at. And one of the statistics I shared was that when a youth has an accepting adult, the suicide rate, because we have really high rates of suicide, depression, and anxiety in queer youth, when they have one accepting adult, and it doesn't have to be a parent, the risk of suicide decreases by 40%. So when you shared that experience of having pastors who loved you and appreciated you and just loved you, right? That is what our queer youth need in order to survive and thrive in this very hostile environment. I appreciated you giving some tips to allies and how we can support, and that, you know, how we can accept correction, you know, working. And I'm telling you, everything you said, I'm like, yep, been there. So in my work, and I love that you talked about that, the journey, right, of figuring and navigating our identity is universal. We all are doing that journey, but there's sometimes there's often a double standards for queer youth and queer adults, right? Like you have to have it figured out right away, right? Like where did that come from? But I have seen, you know, I've been at the high school for 17 years. So I've seen the evolution of youth through sexual orientation, and now more recently through trans and transitioning identities, and how the language changes, and how, you know, and I've made some mistakes in trying to support youth, and I've been fortunate to get correction. And when I get the correction, I apologize, I make a note of it, and I make sure I'm telling everybody in my circle how they can support youth, right? Because we also don't, you know, we make mistakes too. But having that openness to receive correction is so important. You also talked about supportive partners and leaving toxic environments and toxic relationships as being really important in your own journey, which I definitely agree. We often see higher rates of abuse and domestic partner violence in the LGBTQ plus community. And part of that, because of sometimes the silence and the fear that you're not going to be treated equally, or you're going to be treated with discrimination, people often don't share their stories or share their experiences. So it's this double bind that happens. So yeah, again, thank you for pouring into us and sharing all those connections with us. Now, my question I'm going to ask, so the other thing that you've been really vocal around, and you've also shared your experience having a therapist, But talk about, why was mental health an important part of your platform as a pastor in a Black church, right? Where we get messages that you just gotta, pray about it. You gotta pray harder, right? So for you, how did you come to that, knowing that these two things can coexist and that people didn't have to feel like they couldn't access a therapy or therapist or think about their mental health?
Yes. Thank you for this question. As with most things in my life, it spawned out of experience. Rarely do I do something just off of a hunch. Most times there's been a tangible experience and something's been working through my head all along. So when I first got to Myrtle, mental wellness and a mental wellness ministry was something I was really focused on getting started. And then God blessed us with you, and we were able to really get that up and moving. But it started in my teenage years. I was a youth pastor, and I was licensed to preach at the age of 14. And then our church started growing like wildfire. And my pastor appointed me to be the youth pastor at 15, and he worked at the local high school. And he worked up a deal where I went to school from 9 to 12. Then I worked at this church from 12 until 4. And then I went and did band rehearsal as the drum major afterwards. So I've been working full time in the church since I was 15. Something interesting happened. Our science teacher committed suicide in the school, in his room, in the closet of his classroom.
Wow. Oh,
here I was as both a student and a pastor to the youth who also populated the school, who were Black, because we had the sort of more popular church in that area and the only real booming youth ministry. On a Wednesday night, we could have about 200, 250 young people at Bible study. They used to just be hanging, they used to just be sitting on top of the stove. The rhetoric that I heard, because I was a young person and because this teacher was white, the local white church handled it, but a lot of the Black clergy and stuff were there, including my pastor, and the language was so toxic theologically. It was get saved, give God your life so that you don't end up like this. It was talk about if you commit suicide, you go to hell. Not once was there a moment to dignify the sanctity of his worth as a person. Not once was there an opportunity to talk about stress and anxiety and what happens when a person becomes overwhelmed. And it dawned on me, if this is the way that the church responded to it, and the church, that's where everybody goes to try and figure out what's going on, then something has to change. And so that really became part one. Then part two, one of my closest friends committed suicide when he found out that he was HIV positive, and he didn't want to admit it to his parents, because then he would also have to simultaneously admit that he was gay. And so he decided to self-terminate. The church wasn't there for him. Yeah, my spirit, my countenance is even saddened by thinking about these two instances, because it just reminds me of where I think the church has failed in a large way. And so I can preach a million sermons about how the church is failing at this, or I can try my best to do what work I can in my context. And so that's what the work at Myrtle is all about.
Yeah. Again, thank you for sharing those stories of two people in your life who impacted you. And who, died by suicide, at a difficult time. And I think part of the, the lack of knowledge about mental health and what causes people to see suicide as an option, right? It's, they're often at a really hopeless point in their lives, and they can't, they don't have the judgment. They can't see beyond their circumstances to make choices. So, I know last year, I partnered with Myrtle, and we did a number of trainings around suicide prevention because I was particularly interested in ensuring that we covered this topic, because I knew people were alone and isolated and COVID. And I just wanted to, again, bring that information to people and to talk about it, right? So we're not having this silence or this taboo approach to suicide, right? We have to name it, and we have to talk about what are the things that cause it and how we can support ourselves and family members who might be struggling with different types of mental health conditions. So I really appreciate, and again, it's helpful for me to hear kind of some of the inspiration and the stories behind why you do what you do. It gives me a lot of insight, and again, thank you for sharing those stories and why it is so important that churches really take on this this opportunity. I remember being, I don't know if I grew up Seventh-day Adventist, back in Barbados, and when Jeff and I, my spouse, met, we were looking for a church which we could both connect to. And I remember, tapping back into the Seventh-day Adventist church and being witness to a sermon which was homophobic. And I'm like, we're not coming back here. And we're going to find another space, because again, in my work with youth, and my culture is very homophobic, and my work with youth, was really an education and just an understanding of people. And I could not be aligned with my values and the work that I want to do to support people, and be in a space that was not affirming to people in their congregation. So my last question for you, I can't believe it's already our time to wrap up. But what are some things that you do for support, for healing? What are some of your go-to strategies for self-care?
We're gonna be honest, all right? We're gonna be honest, and I'm not gonna.
We've been honest all day, so you might as well.
Because we love to get in these circles and be like, oh, I go for a walk every morning, and I just, One of my main things that I do, it's real hard. It's so hard. It's the hardest thing in the world. You know what it is? Trying to do nothing.
I can connect with that. I can connect with that. Yep.
Trying to do nothing, like literally trying to do nothing. And I never realized that takes effort. Partially because this thing up here
is always going. I know.
I mean, I can start right before I will know it. I will be full-fledged in the middle of writing a sermon, not even intending it. It'll just happen. Or, for me, it's a part of my problem is the people I follow on Instagram. You know how some people be talking about, oh, they be following all these people, but they looking at what they're doing. Well, everybody I follow is a nerd. And my issue is books and feeling like, oh my God, I just got something else I need to read. Oh, look, there's something else I need to read. Yeah. And it's like, in the field that I'm in the academy, it's always a new book coming out. And it's always somebody doing some new research. And bet your bottom dollar, you're going to be in some conference somewhere and somebody's going to talk about some enocyclocephaliane, and I ain't even going to know what the word is. So it's that, it's just something simple as, okay, I'm just going to look through Instagram. Instagram becomes oh, shucks, I ain't read that book. Oh, shucks, let me look at a couple of pages on Google Books. Oh, let me write something on this. So trying to do nothing, that's a main one. Actually trying to be fully present in moments of recreation.
Okay.
I can have moments where I'm not present. This happens with the dogs sometimes. And it's funny, like dogs are just like, no, you're gonna pay attention to me. You are really good. Yes, you are. Or sometimes it can happen, in relationships with your partner. It's just kind of like, wait a minute, put your phone down. I don't know if you heard the R&B song. Now put your phone down. Put your phone down. It's just, anyway, I don't know who it is. But being fully present in moments of recreation. And and notice that I'm sharing with you forms of self-care that I'm working on perfecting. I'm not sharing with you what I've gotten. And to me, it's the working on trying to perfect it that makes it a practice. I'm practicing it.
Yes, it is about practicing for sure.
Yes, it's not
perfected.
It's not what is it called?
I said perfecting.
Self-care. Yeah, it's self-care, not self-perfecting.
Right.
You're just caring for yourself. So trying to do that. And then I think one of the things that I actually do enjoy, and I do this very just like rapidly, I listen to a lot of music. I listen to a lot of music. And contrary to popular belief, it is not all church music. I know most people think I'm listening to church music all the time, but I'm a lover of all types of music. Well, not all types.
You've been dropping some Beyonce. You got a lot of sermons around Beyonce, so I know you like some Beyonce.
Love Beyonce. I do love Beyonce. I think that's just it's the stereotypical queer thing. I just gotta like Beyonce. It's just kind of like being a queer man of the 60s and 70s and not liking Aretha Franklin. Come on now, and Diana Ross, So yes, I do listen to a lot of music, but as of late, the music that I've been listening to more so has been music that doesn't have words, because it frees my mind to come up with my own narration to the experience.
Yeah. Well, you give me one song, because I forgot to ask you this. We usually start out with a song that people love, that gets you pumping, gets you uplifted. So share that song, and we'll kind of close out on that note. What's a song that gets you going?
So the real song that I've been listening to a lot, and I'm like, it's Ballin' by Roddy Rick.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
Okay, thank you. Tyrone was like, Rich, it's not Rick. I don't know why. I've been like, this has been my song. And anybody that follows me on Instagram, my sister Elantra knows that this is one of my favorite songs. Because when we went to Miami, we listened to it the whole time, she and I, while we were hanging out. So she was playing this as my song. I just like it. I don't know. It's
okay, I see the explicit version. All right, so
no, don't play the explicit version.
I won't play the explicit version.
Are you gonna play it?
I'm gonna play as we close out. So yeah.
All right.
But I just want to really just thank you. I knew this was going to be an awesome conversation, and I just thank you for being you and for sharing your story, sharing your journey, sharing your aspects of your identity that are important to you. And I love you very much, and I can't wait to see you in person. I get little updates from somebody who you know.
Yes.
But I'm so looking forward to connecting with you again. And thank you again for being here. And we're going to close out on Ballin'. Let me put my volume up.
Yes, and please give your family a hug for me. Please
okay.
Give the children and your husband, please give them my hello.
All right. Thank you all, and we'll be back next week. Next week starts out July, which is BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month. So we're going to be coming with new guests every week again and keeping these conversations going. Thank you all so much for being a part of the Insight community. We love you and continue to support the work that we're doing. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.